immediately following a trauma, the dream will be an exact replay of the event.
I had backflashes of...
Jody Metheny was 10 at the time of the kidnapping.
It was just like they were still out there and they were still coming after us.
I thought they were going to line us up and shoot us. And I think
Jennifer Brown repeatedly has had a type of dream that's common to trauma victims.
There was a lot of kids in it, and they would line us up, and they'd put apples on our heads, shoot apples off, and miss, and kill us.
You would actually see yourself die in the dream?
Yeah, and then it's like over. After me, there's nobody else.
Dreaming your own death is rare, and it's often a sign of real-life trauma. Dr. Terr found that 5 of the kids dreamed of their own deaths within a year of the kidnapping. 5 years later, the number had gone up to 12. And even today, 10 years later, many of the Chowchilla victims are unusually fearful. Could any of this have been prevented? Well, only a short time after the kidnapping.
Somebody called a meeting of the parents with the county mental health department. We had quite a discussion with the man that they sent, and he said there won't be any problems. There just wouldn't be any long-term problems.
He was just wrong.
Yes.
These kids would have been helped if someone had talked to them sooner?
I think they could have. I think that it was shown during the wars, particularly, that if a man was evacuated at once and talked to at once and worked with at once, that he could go back to the battlefield and do all right. People do better if they are tended to right away after a trauma.
Lean back and close your eyes.
Finally, getting back to the common childhood nightmares, what can you do about them? Well, Dr. Garfield teaches the kids that they can gain some control over their dreams, that they can stop the nightmare and create a happy ending just by imagining it.
Make it better, and then draw the change.
Dr. Garfield found that if the kids put the new, improved dream endings down on paper, it can enable them to dream those better endings next time they're having a nightmare. And this is something you can do at home with your child.
You teach the child you can do something about your life. You're not helpless. You've got some power, and you can call on that in a dream, so that if they find themselves again in a similar frightening situation, they will remember within the dream, hey, I can do this differently. I have a choice. But I didn't have to run. And they will change what's going on and make the dream better.
This is the way one little girl handles her bad dreams. The technique does work. Lots of kids are using it successfully.
All you have to do is remember, you can change it. It's your dream. You can have anything you want happen in your dream.
I'm going to remember that myself, so all my dreams can have happy endings. Thank you, John. Yeah. If a child has frequent dreams when young, that's fine. If he or she has them as he or she gets older, is that also, you know,
the doctor
normal?
said 12 is the cutoff point. Younger than that, nightmares are normal. Frequent nightmares after that are a sign there may be some real psychological problem and you should get help.
But what about creativity for nightmares? I seem to remember that the authors of Dracula and Frankenstein both were inspired by their nightmares.
Right. There seems to be a real tie to creativity, and that a survey at a college found that art students have more nightmares than phys ed majors. And Robert Louis Stevenson used to say that he'd wait for nightmares before he'd write the next chapter, and Jekyll and Hyde was his nightmare.
So I'm not going to say pleasant dreams, I'm going to say happy nightmare.
I'll take pleasant dreams.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Next, if you stood accused of murder, could a tracking dog's findings convict you? Well, the answer is yes. This man's dogs have done that. But innocent people may be in jail. Geraldo Rivera investigates Tracking the Tracker right after this.
Been looking for you, Rico.
I'm warning you. I'm having a bad day.
Looks like you've had a lot of bad days.
Figured you'd bring a gun.
Brought something better. FTD pick-me-up bouquet, flowers, a rainbow coffee mug, and a reusable tote bag.
Pretty.
For you.
For me? Shucks, guess it ain't a bad day after all. Who was that bearded man? I wanted to thank him.
The party's back. the pride is back. With the versatile Plymouth Voyager, car-like handling, front-wheel drive, backed by the 550 protection plan. Plymouth, the pride is back. Born in America.
The pride is back. Born in America. Again.
Ah, Hot Bites nuggets from Banquet in 3 great tastes.
Hot from the oven, anytime from time. Hot Bites party nights, dip 'em, pop 'em all right.
Hot Bites.
Hot lunch on the go, catch 'em with your favorite show.
Banquet Hot Bites. Nuggets of cheddar and mozzarella cheese. Hot and spicy chicken are sure to please.
Hot Bites holidays, stack 'em up 100 ways.
Hot Bites nuggets from Banquet in 3 great tastes.
Hottest bites around.
Hot Bites.
A lot of you are watching this commercial on a 19-inch TV. Nice, but a little crowded. Some of you have a 25-inch set. Gives you a little more elbow room. Now, this is Zenith's new 27-inch television, the big picture, with more picture from corner to corner, plus an incredibly sharp, even larger image. Zenith Advanced System 3 27-inch television, a size you could get comfortable with. The smart set's smarter than ever.
His dogs are called the world's greatest tracking dogs. They've been used in hundreds of criminal cases, but they may also have put innocent people in jail. Geraldo Rivera investigates, tracking the tracker, when 2020 continues.
My name's MacGyver. I come up against some pretty tough guys.
And Sunday, his mission takes him to Southeast Asia, where America's newest hero fights to set hostages free.
A little flashy, but effective.
Sunday before Dallas Cowboy New York Giant football, MacGyver.
You'll love
the British Concorde attitude. You'll find it round the world at every altitude on British Airways, the world's favorite airline.
General Hospital's Jack Wagner, Friday at midnight. This is an Eyewitness News Brief brought to you by Ameritech Bell Yellow Pages. Here's Mary Ann Childers.
Good evening. There's an unconfirmed report in a Beirut newspaper tonight that American diplomat William Buckley has been executed by his Shiite Muslim kidnappers. We'll have a complete report at 10. Also tonight, a Southside college student working as a door-to-door salesman is killed by what may be a mistaken jealous boyfriend. Now this.
When you're hungry, there's one place that's always open.
Ameritech Bell, Yellow, Pages.
The complete, the accurate, the original, the one you know.
Ameritech Bell, Yellow, Pages.
When you're looking for something, when you're looking for someone, look in the book.
You know the one.
The complete, the accurate, the original, the one you know.
Ameritech Bell, Yellow, Pages.
Published by Reuben H. Donnelly.
We're going to have a look at some really dazzling television commercials from around the world, plus weather and sports, tonight at 10 o'clock.
This is a fact. One well-trained dog can help find and convict criminals. And in a moment, you'll learn why evidence uncovered by tracking dogs is so convincing to jury members. Because that's so, what Geraldo Rivera has learned about this man's tracking dogs is truly frightening. His dogs have been called super dogs. In over 17 states, law officers and district attorneys have used them to crack tough cases. They have literally put people behind bars. But the handler's methods and his dogs are now being challenged. Innocent people, it seems, may have been victims.
Whether it's in real life or in the movies, the escaping con usually has the head start, but just until the law brings in the dogs.
Trained dogs are one method used by law enforcement to catch up with the crooks. These wonderful animals, with their extraordinary sense of smell, have proven an invaluable weapon in the arsenal of law enforcement.
Just 2 weeks ago in North Carolina, for example, bloodhounds successfully tracked 2 men wanted in connection with the murder of a rookie state trooper. Tracking dogs were also used in the successful rescue last month of a retarded man lost in upstate New York, and in the desperate search for survivors of the big quake in Mexico City. To those traditional roles, a supposed expert has been crisscrossing the country in recent years, convincing otherwise sober lawmen he had a wonder dog that could do things no dog had ever done. A dog who could, with regularity, find the scent of a criminal left months or even years before. A dog and a dog handler who were never, ever wrong.
My name is John Preston.
Number 3.
My name is John Preston.
Only one of these people is the real John Preston and has sworn to tell the truth.
Whether or not he tells the truth, the real John Preston is contestant number 3. And until very recently, he had the world convinced his animals were more effective crime stoppers than Rin Tin Tin.
Any idea of how many cases you've worked?
I've probably done between 300 and 500 actual cases.
To the best of your knowledge, have you ever been wrong?
To my knowledge, no, I don't feel that I've ever been wrong.
But other expert dog handlers, like Miami's Phil Holscher, claim Preston is a phony.
No one has ever done what this man claims to do because it can't be done. Well, I think it goes a little farther than claiming to do it. I went out and did it. No doubt in my mind, no doubt in anybody's mind that was there.
John Preston became interested in dog tracking while a Pennsylvania state trooper. Now Preston and his wonder dogs are based out of his home and kennel in northern Pennsylvania. Until controversy began cutting down business, they were flown first class all across the country to the scene of a crime. And despite the protests of defense attorneys that his work had no scientific basis, dog evidence provided by Preston sent many of their clients to jail. One of the early cases for Preston and his wonder dogs happened here in eastern Oklahoma. It was a grisly triple homicide. Back in 1977, 3 Girl Scouts, ages 7 to 10, were brutally raped and murdered in the woods behind me. Preston and a colleague volunteered their services. They claimed their dogs had already solved 100 cases, and they pledged to have this case wrapped up within 48 hours. What happened next would have been funny if it weren't so tragic. Detective Arthur Linville was agent in charge of the murder scene.
Preston and his colleague were saying that they were having difficulty in picking up a trail by virtue, according to them, of the scent having risen into the trees and collected there.
The scent of the murderer drifted into the trees.
That's exactly right. It's what they were saying. And they asked for and were provided with 2 crop dusters who were making passes with water to spray the Camp Scott area with water, according to Preston and his colleague, to have the moisture fall upon the trees and forcing the scent back down to the ground where they could then follow it.
It sounds almost burlesque.
It was.
And it gets worse. You see, on the night the children were murdered, the owner of this small farm, located near the Girl Scout camp, reported his place had been burglarized. When several of the items taken later turned up at the murder scene, the farmer became the prime suspect. Preston probably knew that. He and his wonder dog appeared to track a scent right to the farmer's house. But after the farmer passed a lie detector test, the cops on the scene needed real evidence to implicate the man. Something like the murder weapon, which they thought might have been tossed by the farmer into his pond. Detective Linville couldn't believe what happened next.
They had one of the dogs in a boat in the middle of the pond with its head hanging over the edge of the boat, ostensibly sniffing the pond for a murder weapon at the bottom.
Sniffing the pond?
Yes.
I've never heard of a dog sniffing something through water.
Neither had I.
As you may have already guessed, police divers found nothing. The farmer, his reputation sullied and his health broken, was later cleared of any involvement in the crime, which remains unsolved. Still, Preston used it to bolster his growing reputation, telling reporters and lawmen unfamiliar with the details that he successfully uncovered important evidence in the case. Preston struck again here in Arizona. It was 1982, and it was another sensational case that attracted national attention. This one involved the cold-blooded murder of a postmistress who was kidnapped as she delivered the mail. Again, it's a sad story to which he added a touch of burlesque. This is the story of Preston, blowing with the wind. The woman's body was discovered in a garbage dump in a remote section of an Indian reservation, about 30 miles outside of Phoenix. Footprints found around the perimeter of the dump so closely resembled the victim's shoes that cops believe she had been walked around the site before being killed. Preston was brought in to verify that theory. Although it had rained and the footprints washed away, Preston and his dog appeared to follow the last steps of the slain woman. And the federal prosecutor, Mel McDonald, was impressed.
My first thought was, where has this dog been all of these years?
To be absolutely sure that the woman was forced to walk all around the dump before she was murdered, McDonald sent the tracks found to the FBI crime lab. Surprise, they reported back that Preston was dead wrong. The tracks found did not match the shoes the victim was wearing. In fact, they had nothing at all to do with the crime.
Did Preston have an explanation?
He says, my dog picked up her scent. I said, John, she wasn't walked. They killed her in the car, they took her and dumped her. None of those 4 Indian defendants walked her. He then says, well, it's obvious what happened. The winds caught the scent and blew them out over this area where my dog walked, and so it was probably the winds blowing the scent that caused it, but my dog still smelled the scent.
The wind blew the scent, and he smelled the wind-blown scent.
The wind-blown scent.
How'd you react to that, Judge?
I decided that Mr. Preston wasn't going to be a witness in the case.
Preston's resume includes this case also as one of his great successes.
At the height of his law enforcement career, John Preston brought his wonder dogs here to Brevard County in Central Florida. Located somewhere between the Kennedy Space Center and Disney World, this is the town of Titusville. It's the scene of some of Preston's most impressive investigative triumphs, but it may also prove to be where his track finally ran out. Sam Bardwell is the defense attorney who last year managed to slow Preston down. Bardwell's client and 3 other men were suspects in the murder of an 89-year-old woman. 6 months after the murder, which is long past the period any reputable dog handler would even attempt, Preston went to work, later claiming that his dog had actually managed to find and follow the complicated escape route taken by the 4 defendants. It's 3 miles long and cuts through busy city streets where tens of thousands of other people had walked in the months since the crime. Preston's claim may sound far-fetched, but Bardwell was worried. Do juries generally believe dog evidence?
If not successfully challenged by experts, the evidence is so inherently appealing that, yes, the juries do believe the dog evidence.
Faced with that evidence, which heavily implicated his client, Attorney Bardwell was lucky there was an alibi.
Where was your client at the time of the crime?
My client was at the IZ Musselman Orchards in Ortana, Pennsylvania.
So almost 1,000 miles away.
Absolutely.
After Preston failed a court-ordered test designed to see what his dogs could really do, a judge refused to allow his testimony in this case, and Attorney Bardwell's client was let go, which is not surprising. What is surprising is the fact that Preston continues to have powerful people who support him. Dean Moxley used to be a Brevard County prosecutor. Now he's a judge, and still Preston's biggest fan.
Do you really believe that a dog can track 4 separate defendants almost 3 miles, 6 months after the crime?
I think dogs can do a lot of things that people at the outset say they can't do and they don't try. For instance, pick an arbitrary time figure. A dog can't track after 24 hours, or dogs can't track on pavement, or dogs can't track a person on a bicycle, but they never tried it. And Mr. Preston has tried it, and he is relating things that he observed.
If the dog was not following a scent, how did he track the escape route with such uncanny accuracy?
Well, I think that he had to have received the information from somebody who had access to the investigative reports.
So you believe the dog handler, John Preston, somehow got a hold of the investigative reports, got the information from those reports, and then tried to guide his dog to mimic that conclusion?
That's correct.
That's not true. The police officers that I'm friendly with, that I worked many cases with, they never have told me where a crime scene is or where a track goes to. Ever.
Knowingly, perhaps?
No, knowingly or otherwise. Never. If they did, I would never testify to a case for them.
Because you would never lie on the stand?
No, I will not.
And yet there's an allegation that you lied about your formal training on the witness stand.
Well, that's been asked and answered through many depositions, many trials. I didn't lie about it. There was a misquote of a transcript about my training.
What was your formal training?
240 hours with Tom McGinn's School for Dogs in Philadelphia.
Do you have any proof that you received 240-odd hours of training at the school, at McGinn's School?
Yes, I do.
Do you
I have a
receipts?
certificate from them. Training certificate.
But that was a surprise to dog trainer Tom McGinn.
Well, first of all, the signature is not mine. It's a forgery. Second of all, he did not take 240 hours from me or from any of my employees to my knowledge.
And his training is not the only thing expert handlers question. Just look at these real-life examples of Preston at work. His dog is being given the scent of a suspect in various felony cases. These usually involve murder or rape. The dog is then asked to match that scent to whatever scent the suspect left on the victim's clothing, even if the crime took place weeks or even months before. Every expert viewing these tapes has come to the same conclusion. The dog is not actually working. But you don't have to be an expert to see the dog is simply not interested. The animal is just walking around. And yet in case after case, the police use Preston's evidence from these lineups, and each time the dog stopped, another suspect went to trial.
I know how to read my dog. If someone doesn't like the way he works, that's their problem. I don't have to pacify all the dog handlers in the world.
Like most of Preston's testimony, that only sounds convincing until challenged. Phil Holscher is an award-winning trainer who's instructed police canine units across the country and has testified against Preston. We asked him to show us how tracking dogs really work. 2 hours before, he had laid out a trail, placing an object at the end for the dog to find if he could.
That's it. That's a boy.
Note that the dog is well in front of the handler at all times. The line is taut. The dog's attitude and body language intense. The dog is doing what handlers call deep nose work, focusing on the job and nothing else.
And the article. That's it, my boy.
Now watch Preston and his wonder dog track a scent in an actual murder case.
This dog does not look like he is even remotely trying to find scent. There is just a total lack of enthusiasm, intensity about the dog's entire performance. It's the same thing as if you take an older German Shepherd, hook him on a line, and take him for a walk. I think the big thing is no person in any case that I've ever worked has been convicted, to my knowledge, solely on the dog. There's always been other evidence.
His testimony cost me close to 3 years of my life.
Dale Sutton was sent to prison almost completely on Preston's testimony. After serving 3 years, he was released, only after another inmate confessed to the armed robbery of this Ohio post office. And in Florida, the stakes are even higher for Juan Ramos. He's on death row, facing the electric chair for murder. Elwood Anderson was one of the 12 jurors that found Ramos guilty.
In my decision, the dog's evidence proved everything. That was the most important piece of evidence.
Ramos is now on death row. Would you have convicted him if it weren't for the dog's evidence?
I'd say no.
Do you ever have misgivings personally, maybe late at night in your most private moments, that an innocent person might be in prison today as a result of your testimony?
Absolutely not.
You have no second thoughts?
No, sir, I don't. I fully believe in my dogs and their ability.
Huh. Geraldo, if he is a fake, how could he convince police and jurors?
But they're just like you and I. What do we know about dogs? You know, all we know is what, you know, Lassie, Rin Tin Tin. We think dogs can do everything. Dogs are so friendly and sweet.
Yeah, Lassie does everything.
Man's best friend. So we don't know of their scientific abilities. Therefore, if he makes a, you know, people forget that dogs aren't testifying. It's dog handlers that are testifying.
What about these people who are in jail and even on death row as a result of his testimony? What happens to them?
Well, if I were their attorney, I would say file an appeal, because this is new evidence. If this man really is a fraud, then they have to get out. It's new evidence. They can bring an appeal. And I predict that there'll be dozens after this.
Thank you, Geraldo.
We'll be right back.
Got your luggage at Clark's? Great price, huh?
Yeah, but I saved even more.
Wait, you know someone?
You could say I've got connections.
How'd you save so much on that cruise?
Well, call a few friends.
With AT&T Opportunity Calling, you too have connections. Make your usual calls with AT&T Long Distance, and you can save on travel, luggage, appliances. Look for your catalog in the mail.
Like they say, it's who you know.
AT&T Opportunity Calling. Another reason AT&T is the right choice.
There's something special on the horizon. American Airlines Ultimate Super Savers. Incredible low fares to over 90 cities throughout the continental U.S. and Canada. Discounts up to 70%. Fares from $44 to $151. Call American Airlines for an Ultimate Super Saver before another day passes you by.
In a perfect world, the coffee you brew will be made at exactly 200 degrees. At that temperature, you get every drop of flavor without the bitterness. But it's an imperfect world, which is why you need the Mr. Coffee Ultronic Coffee Maker. The Ultronic brews at 200 degrees. It's the only coffee maker that does, delivering a perfect cup of coffee every time. And right now, get a $10 rebate when you buy the Mr. Coffee Ultronic. The perfect coffee maker for an imperfect world.
Forget that artsy guy with the beard. Let Rex direct your script.
Forget it. Look, come on, let's
Get it.
We shape today's Mercury Cougar to help it hold the road, no matter which road you choose. Mercury, the shape you want to be in.
Saturday, Robert Wagner's in London, and he's taking the ride of his life. It's the great train robbery.
Do we have a plan? Yeah! We're gonna catch them!
Lime Streets. Then Robert Reed and Connie Stevens join the Temptations for a soulful cruise on the high seas. The Love Boat. Yeah.
You'll love it.
Saturday.
You know, in John Stossel's piece on nightmares, I remembered that the most common adult nightmares are supposed to be falling, not being prepared for some situation, a speech or a class, and being chased. You know, the frustration of not being able to run away from something.
Most of us recognize that. What about, did you ever have the fear that you were exposed, that you were nude? There you are suddenly, and you've got no clothes on?
I used to. I haven't since I was about 25. I don't have that.
Someone threw you a towel?
I guess so.
It is interesting, though, that so many of the nightmares is something, no matter what our backgrounds, we all share.
That's true. A human condition. We want you to know that because of Rock Hudson's death and our report on AIDS this evening, we had to postpone Barbara's interview with Monaco's Prince Albert. That's a good one, and we plan to schedule it for next week. Well, now we have this word about tonight's Nightline. Tonight, sizing up Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev. Some charge that the U.S. government and the American news media are making a mistake in their perceptions of the Soviet leader. Ted Koppel will focus on that on Nightline, following your local news. And that's 2020 for tonight. We're in touch, so you be in touch. I'm Hugh Dow.
And I'm Barbara Walters.
And for all of us at 2020, good night.
For a transcript of tonight's broadcast, send $3 to Journal Graphics, Box 2020, Ansonia Station, New York, New York, 10023. This has been the ABC News Magazine 2020.
The Gorbachev-Mitterrand meeting winds up in France, the latest Soviet move toward a U.S.-USSR summit. Live from Paris, Peter Jennings examines Gorbachev's bid to win over American allies. Tomorrow on ABC's World News Tonight.